Welcome to my home. I wish that we were doing this in person, but I don't know if we could quite fit 100 people in my kitchen. So in lieu of that, I'm so happy to host you and to have you all here, and I'm very excited. We have a very simple dish that we're going to prepare tonight, but we wanted to start with something that hopefully you didn't have to do a whole lot of shopping for. These would be items that are fairly typical or that you might have in your pantry. So that's kind of what my thinking was. Also, I want to mention at the end, when you finish your dish, take pictures. And at the end of the presentation, Candace will have a link to all the social media so that you can post your pictures. That would be awesome. We would love to see that. Before we get rolling, I have a couple of things that I want to give you. I want to give you a little history of this dish. Pasta Puttanesca, the literal translation means the prostitute's pasta. So this dish, culinarians or historians have traced back to Naples about 70 years ago, or kind of during World War II. And the idea, or there, excuse me, there are a couple of thoughts of how this dish came about, but there were not a lot of employment opportunities for women at that point. So a lot of women went and worked the night shift. And so this dish was very easy to put together. It was quick, and it said that the aromas from this dish really enticed a lot of men to frequent these houses of ill repute. But another thought is that because these women were working nights, they didn't have an opportunity to go to market regularly or frequently. So these would be typical items that they would have at home, and staple items, especially in Italy. So there it is. There's a little history on the dish. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to former students, as well as some very awesome people that are very near and dear to my heart that I grew up with, the Gray family. So I think Peter, and I know his mom, Kay, is out there, and I think Diane is out there as well. So hello, how are you? Before we get started, I'm going to wash my hands really quickly. I know everyone has been watching and to see how we should all be washing our hands, but if you haven't, I'm going to give you a very quick version. The Nevada, Southern Nevada Health District says that you should wash your hands and sing the happy birthday song. So that's just about the time that's needed. And you want to make sure that you're getting in between all those fingers. The water should be just hot enough that it's not burning, but just hot enough. Usually 100-degree water is perfect. So before we get started, I always like to wash my hands just to make sure that we are good to go. All right. Now, for our recipe this evening, I have all of my ingredients here together. So I want to give everyone the opportunity to also get their ingredients together. I also want to mention that two of the things that I love about cooking at home is that I can drink with wine. And the other is, the rule in my house is, if you cook, you don't have to clean. So as you will notice, when I'm cooking this evening, I like to use every little dish, every pot, every pan, everything I can, because I'm more organized, but I don't have to wash the dishes. So, excuse me. This evening, I'm going to have a little Deloche. This is a rosé of Pinot Noir. Deloche Winery is in the Russian River Valley. They are known for their Pinot Noirs. And Candace posted on the link today The name of my rep at Deloche, her name is Kelly. If anyone would like to order wines through Deloche, they will deliver $1 per case shipping cost, and they'll extend my 30% discount to everyone. So hope you enjoy some wine. I chose this wine this evening because I think this is a really great pairing for this dish specifically. This wine has all the characteristics of a Pinot Noir, but it's in a very light form. So especially now that it's starting to get warm, this is a really awesome wine to pair with this dish. It has a lot of the characteristics of that Pinot grape, but again, it's really light and refreshing. So cheers. All right, so now we are ready to start pulling all of our mise en place together. Mise en place, the translation means everything in its place. So the way that I like to cook is to have everything ready to go, and then we'll start to cook. And that way we're not running back and forth. We have all of our things ready to go. So I'm just gonna hold up my little dishes. I have my olives. I like to cut the olives in half so that I make sure that there are no pits. Also my capers, I have rinsed them. I put that on the recipe. What I like to do is put them through a little conical strainer, and we rinse the brine from them. What you find with this recipe specifically is that we have a lot of ingredients that have a lot of salt to them. The anchovies, the capers, the olives, there's a lot of salt. So by rinsing those capers and getting that additional brine off of them, we're going to make them a little bit less salty and a little bit more palatable for the whole dish overall. I also have these beautiful white anchovies. As compared to normal anchovies, these ones are not cured in salt. They're actually done in a vinaigrette. So it's a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of vinegar, and so they don't have as much salt. They're really bright, and they have a lot of great flavor. So those are the anchovies I'll be using this evening. I have some beautiful cherry tomatoes that I've cut in half. And if you don't have fresh tomatoes, diced canned tomatoes work just fine. So if you have those diced tomatoes, you can use some of the juice if you would like as well, or not. It's up to you. Also this evening, I have my chicken. So a little bit earlier today, I grilled the chicken and I let it cool, and then I diced it up. So they're nice bite-sized pieces. So those are ready to go. And then lastly, or second to last, excuse me, I have my pasta. So I cooked my pasta for 7 minutes in boiling water. Ordinarily, I would tell people that you should salt your pasta water slightly so that when the pasta cooks, it absorbs a little bit of that salt. But again, because this dish has a lot of salty ingredients, I did not do that for this pasta specifically. I also only cooked it for 7 minutes so that when I add it to my hot water on the stove, I can reheat the pasta for 1 minute, it'll cook, and then I'm assured that my pasta will be al dente. Al dente in Italian means with tooth. So I like my pasta to have a little bit more bite to it, a little bit more chew. If you like your pasta cooked a little bit more, by all means, please do. But what I find is I like the pasta when it's a little bit more, has a little bit more bite to it. And I think that that's the best way to eat this pasta. But also, I've seen recently where eating pasta more al dente calorically is a lot less than pasta that is more cooked. And the thought process behind that is that pasta that is more cooked, your body can break it down easily and then can convert those starches to simple sugars, and then your body stores it as fat. Where pasta cooked al dente, it takes your body longer to break that pasta down, and therefore you're storing less fat. So it's actually healthier to eat pasta that is cooked al dente. There it is. Okay, one of the last ingredients that we're going to use today. On the recipe, I put fresh basil or oregano. This is some oregano that I just picked from my garden. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some of these beautiful leaves, and I'm going to show you how to do a knife cut that we refer to as a chiffonade. A chiffonade is a very thin slice, and with these soft herbs, what you find a lot of the time with mint, with basil, with oregano, with marjoram, with these herbs, if you chop them or you really work them with a knife, they will oxidize and they'll turn black. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to show you here, is I've stacked all those leaves together, and then what I'm going to do is just pull the knife through from the front side to the back. And by doing this, these herbs will stay nice and green, and there'll be a nice, really nice thin slice. So that is what we call a chiffonade. So we have our chiffonade of oregano, fresh oregano, for our garnish at the end ready. And now I'm going to prepare the anchovies and the garlic. So with the garlic, I have a nice big plum clove here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that little tip off the end. I always recommend doing that because texturally, if you get that in the dish, it's not a good thing. It feels a little chewy. So I always take that part off. Next, what we're going to do is I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to mash that garlic clove down flat. And I'm going to run the knife over it 3 or 4 times, just like that. And by doing that, now what I've done is I put kind of a paste together. I'm also going to take my anchovy fillets and I'm going to cut those up nice and thin. And then just like the garlic, I'm going to take the knife and I'm going to just lightly push it down. And by doing so, we're kind of creating a paste with that garlic and those anchovies. And now what I'm going to do is just run the knife over it a few times. If you have a couple of larger pieces here, it's not a big deal. You will see when you make this dish that the anchovies and the garlic really just kind of melt into the pasta. So again, I'm just going to mash them down just a little bit. And then I'm going to run my knife over them one more time. All right. And now I have a little plate here. We're going to put our anchovy and garlic together there. All right. And get a little bit of that off. All right. So now that we have all of our mise en place together, now we're going to head over to the stove to start to assemble the pasta. So the first thing I'm going to do is transfer these over here. And then I will move the camera so that everyone can see. All right. So now we're going to move right over here so that everybody can see on the stove. Okay. So now that we're here at the stove, again, I have all of my mise en place together. Here I have a pot of water that's simmering. I have the lid on it. I also have just a little bit of red chili flake. I have a little bit of kosher salt. When I cook, it doesn't matter if I'm cooking in the kitchen at UNLV or cooking at home, I always like to use kosher salt. The reason that I like kosher salt is it is a thin, flat crystal, which any time that it hits any food surface, it starts to dissolve immediately. If you use table salt, it is a cubic structure, and it tends to take a lot longer for that cubic structure to break down and then season the food. So what you'll find is when you cook with kosher salt, you can taste it very quickly. Versus using table salt, it takes a lot longer. Thus, what typically happens is you season, and then it's too salty. So with kosher salt, season, boom, we're done. Now, in the case of today, we're really not going to use a lot of salt. Again, because this dish has our olives, our capers, our anchovies, and then I also have a little bit of Parmigiano Reggiano that I like to put on at the end. Again, for some people, it might be a little bit too much. And the reason being is because Parmigiano Reggiano tends to have a lot of salt or saltiness to it. So what we're going to do now is I have a beautiful extra virgin olive oil. This is from Il Poggione in Tuscany. And if ever there's a time when you want to use a beautiful olive oil, this would be the time. Because you really want these essence of these olive oils to come out. And this would be the time to use it. So I'm going to turn my stove on, a little bit medium-high heat, thereabouts. I'm going to give this a couple tablespoons of olive oil, enough to coat the bottom of the pan. If we need it, we can always add a little bit more. I also have my pasta water here, so I'm going to remove that lid and turn that up just a little bit. Our pasta is going to visit the pasta water for about a minute and a half. All I really want to do is heat it through so that when I add it to this dish, it all kind of comes together. For today, I'm going to use a wooden spoon, and I'm first going to start out with that garlic and anchovy that I kind of mashed together and made that paste in that nice olive oil. And we're going to let that cook. And really what I want to do here is twofold. I want to scent the oil. I want the flavors to come together, the olive oil, the anchovy, and I also want to cook the garlic. As you know, the anchovies are already cured, so we don't need to cook those. But we definitely want to make sure that that garlic cooks enough to where it's not going to have a really hot, garlicky taste. It'll be nice and muted, but kind of in the background. With this dish, we're going to really develop some layers of flavor. And the best way to do that is to nicely cook the garlic and the anchovy together. Now that I have those going, I'm also going to add just a pinch of chili flake. So as you can see, just a little bit. I like a little bit of heat. If you don't, no need. You don't need to add that in. It's not a big deal. But this is a beautiful time to add that because those essence of the chilies will come out in the oil and they'll release. And it smells fantastic right now. I hope yours smells fantastic at home as well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add our olives and our capers. And I'm going to drop this heat down to pretty low. And then we're going to add our pasta to the water. So let's go ahead and add that in there now. And then we'll come back here. So right now, our garlic is cooked. I can really pick up all of the essence of the garlic, the anchovy, a little bit of the chili flake. And we have those beautiful olives and capers in there as well. So we're going to put that back there on the stove. I have a medium heat, not a whole lot. I'm also going to add some of my chicken. So we're going to take some of that nicely diced chicken, and we're going to add that. Now my chicken, for this dish specifically, I used a chicken thigh. I like to use the chicken thigh because it's a little bit more juicy. It's a little bit more forgiving. It doesn't typically dry out as much. But if you wanted to prepare this dish with chicken breast, by all, oops, I want my wooden spoon. If you wanted to prepare this dish with chicken breast, you certainly could, and make it a lot more lean. So now we're just going to mix all those things together. And really for this, the chicken is already cooked, so I don't need to cook it anymore. What I'm doing now is just warming it through. I will say at this point, chicken is not an essential ingredient to this dish. Puttanesca typically has olives, capers, garlic, and anchovies. Chili flake is extra. The fresh herbs are extra. A little tomato is extra. Chicken is extra for sure. But I thought we would do a little bit of chicken in this dish. That way we have a little bit of heartiness to it, so we can enjoy a little bit more. Okay, so everything has come together. Now I'm going to add my tomatoes. All right. So we have our tomatoes in there. I'm going to add a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper. And again, I'm not really going to add much salt because we have the olives, the capers, the anchovies. I think that we're going to be covered. So we've had those tomatoes. I don't want them to cook too much or break down too much. I want them just to be lightly warmed or wilted. And now I'm going to take my pasta scooper and I'm going to add my pasta. A little bit of this pasta water, when you add it, is always good. And the reason being is some of that starch tends to fall off of our pasta. That will also help thicken. So I always like to keep my pasta water just in case. All right, and there we are. And now this dish really has come together. I'll toss it a couple more times, just like that. And we'll turn that one off. And now we'll go to start plating. So here, what I have is a couple of bowls. I'm gonna get that there. And I have a couple of bowls. And what we're going to do, so as if you can see, we have all of that that's come together really nicely. And with every scoop, I'm gonna get a little bit of the chicken, the pasta, the capers, the olives, everything together. You won't see the garlic or the anchovies. Again, they've kind of melted into our pasta. And then this looks gorgeous. Now, this is more of a very traditional type pasta from Italy, where there isn't really a lot of sauce. It's not going to coat everything. This is just a focus on very simple ingredients. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it just a little drizzle of this beautiful fresh olive oil. And then again, we have our nice green chiffonade of oregano. So we're going to do a little bit of our fresh oregano. And then, as promised, I have a nice piece of Parmigiano Reggiano. And what I'm going to do with my microplane is just give it a very light dusting of this cheese, just like that. And there we have it, our Pasta Puttanesca. All right, so there it is. And now it's time for me to try a bite and see how it turned out. Beautiful, beautiful. Now, the biggest critic of mine is my wife, Dee. So we'll give her a bowl and see how she likes it.
Wait, what are you doing?
Here's Dee.
Wait, all I wanted to do is get a snap of you doing this.
There's Dee.
Hi.
Take a bite. See how you like it.
Oh, it smells good. Oh, perfect.
All right. Good, good. So, there we have it. There is our pasta puttanesca. Now, I know that Candace was going to open up so that if anyone had some questions, they could present some questions now. So, Candace, did we have any questions from anyone?
I don't see any questions just yet, Chef. Everybody is commenting on how great it was and how beautiful your dish looks. Actually, we just got one question. Celine would like to know what olive oil you're using.
So this is an extra virgin olive oil that I got in Tuscany, and it's from Il Poggione, and it's one of our favorite wineries in Tuscany, and they also make this beautiful olive oil. So again, when you make or prepare this dish, my suggestion is that you use a really, really good extra virgin olive oil, because this is where you're going to get all of those flavors to come together. Unlike cooking, if you're going to saute a chicken breast or do something like that, you don't want to use an extra virgin olive oil because the smoking point of this oil is lower and therefore it will burn. So this is not a good oil to do high heat searing or anything like that. But for a dish like this, where it really kind of melts or adds all of that great flavor into the dish, this is a good one.
Great. Another question is from Mark. From whom is the best pasta to use?
What brand? I'm assuming?
I'm assuming so.
So this is Barilla. It's an Italian brand. I like it a lot. I think it's a great brand. I've used it in restaurants for years. So that is the brand of pasta that we're using this evening, is Barilla. But certainly there are a number of great pastas out there. But that's the one that I use the most.
Okay. Lisa would like to know if using dried herbs, should we add after or during cooking?
I like to add dried herbs a little bit kind of in the middle of cooking. And the reason for that is when you use a dried herb, think of all those flavors have concentrated down. So it's a little bit more pungent, but you also want it to release those oils. You don't want to add it at the end and not give it enough time to for those flavors to come out. So I typically add it kind of right in the middle. I think a good time to add that would be right after we add our chili flake, kind of to get it in the oil, to infuse the flavors into the oil. And then you can always add more if you want a little bit more flavor to it. Dried basil, dried oregano, fresh basil, fresh oregano would be beautiful in this dish.
Sharon would like to know, where did you get the white anchovies?
So I like to get them at Whole Foods. They are the store brand, or the name that they're referred to is called bocarones, which means a white anchovy that is preserved in a vinaigrette or in a vinegar and oil solution. But that's where I usually get them, is at Whole Foods. And I don't have a specific brand name. They tend to change. But these come in a rather large tub or container. It's probably about 4 to 5 ounces. But in the refrigerator, they're great for months. Yeah.
Mark would like to know, when you cut the fresh leaves, you said from front to back. Does that mean from the end of the leaf to where it connects to the stem?
No. So with that, what you want to do is you want to put the tip of the knife on the cutting board and draw it through the herb so that you're not cutting down. The cutting motion of cutting the blade like this will actually rupture more cells of the leaf. Therefore, it's going to oxidize a lot faster. So when you put the tip of the knife down and draw it through the leaf, it will actually do a lot less structure damage to the herb itself, and therefore you'll have basil or mint or oregano, some of these soft fiend herbs that will remain in beautiful color when you add them to a dish.
Charles would like to know, if someone is a vegan, would you use something else for the anchovies and chicken?
You know what, with this kind of a dish, the anchovies are really just kind of that depth of flavor. You don't see them in the dish, and I think that everyone that made the dish at home will see that you don't actually see the anchovies in there. So you could definitely omit them and just do garlic, chili flake, capers, the olives. Maybe you add some artichoke hearts or roasted peppers. Maybe you add a little bit of sun-dried tomato. So there's certainly a lot of ingredients that you could incorporate into the dish and not have chicken. You could add more vegetables, fresh vegetables that maybe you par cook or grill, maybe some eggplant or some squash or zucchini, things like that. So certainly you could make this dish vegetarian or vegan. This pasta, barilla, is an extruded pasta. So it goes through the process. It's semolina and durum flour, and then it's added to water, and it's pushed through a machine that has dies and then blades that cut it. So this particular pasta is vegan because there's no egg product that's typical to a fresh pasta. So this is vegan as much as you want to make it. You could definitely omit the anchovy and the cheese.
And the chicken.
And the chicken.
Our very own Dean Stowe would like to know, what are capers?
So capers are the bud of a particular plant, and the buds are then harvested and then preserved in a brine. So a caper is a bud of a particular plant. I don't know what that plant is. And then some of you may have seen a caper berry, and a caper berry is the fruit of that particular plant. So the caper is the bud, the caper berry is the actual fruit, and then both of them separately are cured in a salt brine and preserved. Bonus on that question. That was a really good one, Dean Stowe.
Does anyone have any other questions for Chef? No, I don't see anything else coming in.
Well, in the meantime, I really hope that everyone enjoys this pasta. It was a pleasure for me to invite you to my home to cook with you. I hope that you have a great meal, and remember to take your pictures.
I actually have one more question for you, Chef. Sorry, don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Peter would like to know what influenced your choice to become a chef.
So growing up, my father was a great cook, and my mom and dad were both educators. They both taught high school, and my sister and I were both very athletic. So by the time we would get home from school and practice every night, we were all famished, hungry, and we wanted to put dinner together quickly. Well, the best way to do that was for all of us to work together. My mother, I love her to death, but she is not a good cook, and she never has been. But she was very good at kind of delegating and getting everyone to go and do their thing. So she would delegate, and my dad and I and my sister would all cook. And over time, I started to learn and develop these basic skills and knife skills, and I found when I was in high school that I really enjoyed cooking for people because of the instant gratification. And that's something that I've always kind of chased and followed in my career is when you cook for someone and they really enjoy it and they love it, the gratification is instant versus a lot of other industries and jobs where it may take months and months and months of working at a desk or doing reports or whatever it is. But with cooking, it's instant gratification daily. You know, cooking professionally on the strip, there were days and nights where I would cook for 1,000 people per day. And knowing that all of those people left my restaurant and loved the food, it just fuels the fire. And it really kept me going back every day. Yeah.
Great. Lisa and Mark would like to know, what's your favorite variety of tomato?
Favorite variety of tomato. So I really love heirloom tomatoes. In my garden currently, I have probably 5 or 6 different varieties of tomatoes. I have some purple Cherokees. I have some beefsteak tomatoes. I have cherry tomatoes. I have yellow pear tomatoes. But I think of all of the tomatoes, quite possibly my favorite is the San Marzano. It's an Italian variety. It looks very similar to a Roma tomato, but for some reason, this particular strain just has this really, really sweet, intense flavor profile to it. There are a few brands that if you go to the grocery store that you may see now, I don't know, but the San Marzano tomato is amazing, and I typically have those in my garden. I didn't this year. We weren't able to get them, so San Marzano is top drawer. Love it.
Lynn would like to know, have you been able to try out any new recipes in the kitchen during quarantine?
You know, it's one of those things where typically when I go grocery shopping, I look to the store to provide me with inspiration. So I'll walk around, and I really like to start at the produce end, and I like to buy as much fresh produce as possible. And then from there, I take that inspiration and I figure out what I'm going to do with it. During this time, it's been a little bit more challenging with shortages in certain foods and things like that. But I would say that I've definitely played around with some different flavors. The other thing is that we get Sunbasket twice or 2 meals per week from Sunbasket. The one that I've selected is it's all organic, and it is it's called Lean and Mean. Go figure. I put on the COVID-19, but it helps. So with these particular meals, they're under 700 calories, and everything's organic, and I love them. And they typically have really odd flavor profiles. So they use a lot of ingredients from the Middle East, like sumac and different kind of spices and things like that. So they're very different. So it's kind of fun to get those because everything comes in the box that you need, and it's all the right portions. And then you really don't have to look for recipes or anything. It's all included. So I've been doing some cooking, but of course not as much as I'd like to, but yeah, I'm definitely excited to get back into a big kitchen. I think one of the fears that we've run into during this stay-at-home period is running out of dish soap and detergent for the dish machine because we're home now and we cook so much, or I cook so much. Dee does the dishes. That's our biggest fear, is running out of detergent for that.
I don't see any other questions coming in. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to ask Chef Mark before we wrap up?
Candice,
Right, no,
can
Oh,
I
yes.
just say something?
Of course.
Thank Chef Mark. I want to thank you, Candice. I want to thank Maggie and everybody who just really worked very hard, Karen, to help put on this great event. I learned a lot tonight. And it was just really fun. And what was really fun is to see how many folks that came in from all across the ages in terms of when they graduated. And I saw some former students, which really made me proud. So thank you, Chef. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Candice, for this wonderful event. And don't forget, we have 2 more upcoming events, May 8th and May 9th, which will be just great. So thank you.
I agree.
Thank you, Chef.
Thank you to everyone. And it was such a pleasure to have everyone into my home. And I hope that you enjoyed dinner and maybe picked up a few new cooking techniques or tips or whatever it is. But thank you so much, and bon appetit.
Thank you, Chef Mark. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. And everyone, if you wouldn't mind sharing your pictures at UNLV Hospitality, UNLV Hospitality alum, that would be great. We'd love to see everything that you have cooked this evening. And hopefully we see you all next week on May 8th and May 9th for our upcoming events. Good night.